Coming up on tonight's Faith versus Culture, actress and author Sam Sorbo talks about America's education battle. Coming right up.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
There are problems of sin and habit that cannot be solved outside the person of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Faith versus Culture. I am very excited today. As always, Trey Goins-Phillips is here with me, and we have Sam Sorbo, one of my friends who is a phenomenal author, actress, producer. You do everything, Sam. You really do. It's incredible. Welcome to the show.
I don't do anything. It just looks like I do everything.
Well, it's great to have you with us here to talk about homeschooling, because I know that's something that you're particularly passionate about, and it's something that's gaining so much attention, I think, since 2020, right? Since COVID happened, it's kind of blown up. And there's a new study that actually just came out that shows that public schools are steadily losing students, while private schools and charter schools are picking students up, but also homeschools are really blowing up. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you think that shift not only happened, but is lasting and continuing to grow?
Well, I think that with COVID, because they sent all the work home, there were two things that happened actually, and one of them's unfortunate, and the other one's the silver lining. So the unfortunate thing is that a lot of parents thought they were homeschooling when all they were doing was the homework that the school was sending home, which is not at all what homeschooling is. And it's why I don't actually advocate for homeschooling anymore per se, because that word has now been perverted, say. The other side of it, the silver lining, is that a lot of parents saw what they're trying to get away with in our schools, and the parents are just saying, well, not that. Like say what you want about, whether my child's getting educated. I still don't want that. And that's the silver lining in all of this, is the parents are finally stepping up and saying, okay, it's enough. If I do, and this is what I tell parents, and I reach that point, if I do nothing for my child, but take him out of school, he will be better off. And so you're starting basically from zero. So can you do something rather than nothing? And every parent can do something. But if you at least save your child from the abject abuse that is happening in our schools, and abuse happens in myriad ways, but one way to abuse a child is to lie to them and to tell them things that simply aren't true. That's abusive to a child. And so if you can just avoid abuse, you're coming out ahead.
You know, one of the things that's really intriguing when you look at all of this is we're sort of seeing where we are right now. COVID gave us that lens into it. But I think a question a lot of people have, and you've been looking at this for a long time, how in the world did we get here? How did the schools get to a place where these sorts of lies and these sorts of things have so permeated the education system?
I love that question, Billy, because it had to. It was inevitable. This is simply the natural outgrowth of the system of, quote, schooling that we have. It's the natural progression. So school itself, by itself, school is anti-God and anti-child. It's actually anti-education, the entire system. And the reason that I say that is because the Bible's very clear. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, make sure you find a good school for your child. The Bible is very clear in the admonishment of the parent to educate the child. Twice the grandparents, but by and large, the parents are responsible for the education of the children. Why is that? That's because education is it's a lot more than the 3 R's. It's a lot more than simply academic. But what happened was, when we put education into an institution, or tried to, we then started focusing on just the academics, because that's the one thing that you can test. And so you get these metrics of how well accomplished the education part is in terms of the academics. And of course, it's steadily been declining because they can't even do the academics. But the other thing that they can't do that education should be is it should be doctrinal. It should be doctrine. Now we're at a point where they said, we're going to take all the doctrine out of education. We're just going to do the 3 R's. You people with your Bibles, you stay out of this. We're going to take the Bible out of school, and school won't be doctrinal at all. It'll just be academic, which is a complete fallacy. But that's what they told us. And we went along with it because we thought, well, we are Christians, so we'll just keep our Christianality, our Christianity over to the side. We'll do that on Sunday, which was that's devastating for the church. That was just a complete misplay by the church to bow out. Okay. So anyway, fast forward to today when you've got the law in, they signed it into law in the state of Oregon that a child need not know how to read or do math to graduate high school. So clearly they're saying, okay, it's no longer about the academics. Well, what is it about? It's about doctrine. And we're saying, hey, stop indoctrinating the children. No, that actually is what education should be. It's just that they have really bad doctrine. They've got the wrong doctrine. And so now as Christians, this is an up or down decision. This is a yes or no decision. Do you believe in truth? Do you believe in Christ? They don't. They are going to train your children to believe the way that they believe. Are you okay with that? And then when you say, well, heck no, I'm not okay with that, then come to me because I can show you what we mean by education, what we ought to mean by education. And it's not the 3 R's. I like to call it the 3 F's: faith, family, and freedom.
I think that raises a good point because we're kind of at an inflection point as a country, and for good or bad, I think people have kind of taken the gloves off. The scales have fallen off. We're seeing so many schools just being really open about what they're pushing, whether it's about critical theory or gender policy and all of that. So I think parents are struggling. Do I keep my kids in this public school system and try to engage, or do I pull them out altogether? I think that's a tough decision for a lot of parents.
So, I talk to parents who say, well, my children are the salt and the light. And I say, why are you having your children, who are children, wage your battles? You go run for school board. You be salt and light. Keep your kids off the front lines. I feel very strongly about that. And I know there are children who are being persuaded away from truth. I would never risk my child in that endeavor. I would never. It's a child. This is a child. And I will say, when you send your child to school, you're tacitly telling the child, I can't, they know better than me, trust them, they're the authority. And then on the flip side of that, if you go along with me and you agree that education really ought to be more than academic, then you're really in a hard place, because why are you sending your child to school to learn false doctrine? You shouldn't. That's like a full stop right there. The academics will come. So there are so few arguments. There really are no arguments to be made to leaving your child in school unless they're self-serving. Like, well, I need the time. I need to be able to do my thing or what have you. And I would say, I would hope that you would prioritize your children.
Well, Sam, we are going to take a quick break, and that actually brings us to a point of talking about your journey and your story, which we will get to in just one moment when we are back with more Faith versus Culture. Welcome back to Faith versus Culture. We are here with Sam Sorbo. Now, Sam, you just gave, before the break, a very passionate breakdown of why you believe strongly in not having children in the public schools. Let's talk about your journey, though, because you have been very candid and open about this. You and your husband, Kevin, you have obviously been in the entertainment industry. You're an author. You do a million things, and you're busy. And so you very easily could have had that same excuse of, I have a lot to do, and so I need to have my kids in a school. But you chose homeschooling. What was that journey for you?
I did have a lot to do, and I had a full-time nanny. And when we moved back to LA with the 3 kids and a full-time nanny, I decided to go and audition. And one day I came back from an audition, and an audition's like a 3-hour, I was gone for 3 hours. And probably my third audition, I came home and my little toddler chased me down with her little finger in my face. No, 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 no. I was like, what's this about? So I picked her up, put her on my hip, and she immediately turned to the nanny and she said, bye-bye. And I realized she wanted to be the priority. She wanted mommy. And that's when I made the choice to be home with them. Now, fast forward to, I did put my kids in school because I thought academically they needed the academics. And then I noticed that the school was not that interested in academics because they're not. And then I thought, okay, I could take and by the way, there's too much bullying in schools. There's too much of this, survival of the fittest mentality. There's too much ageism. My son was sort of lording his older age over his 2 siblings, and the rivalry that started. It was not good. And so I just decided that I could take him out and homeschool him, what I thought homeschooling was. And he would be better off, even if I failed. Even if I completely failed with whatever I tried, he would still be better off because doctrinally he would be better off. And it wasn't a religious decision, but it was a belief and value system decision. And so then when I had the kids home, it's not enough for me to just home educate my kids. So I started doing other things, and I would work a couple days on a movie set, or I would write. I wrote a lot because writing you can do at home with the kids around. So I did actually work full time, even while I was educating my 3 children and supervising their education. And so I know that it can be done. And I know that God redeems what he sees of value. So I walked away from my career twice, and it landed right back in my lap later in a way that I would never have imagined. Because at that point, if I had tried to pursue acting, I don't know that I would have been as successful as I ended up being. And I certainly know that my marriage and my family would have suffered. And so I'm just grateful to God for deciding to do it this way instead. And for me to hear that little voice saying, no, 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 you got this wrong. You need to recalculate and revamp. And it's all about priorities, which by the way, we are not taught to prioritize in school, right? You've heard it. You were taught you can have it all, and you can't because there's too much.
I think that conversation about priorities is so important because if you look at the mainstream media, right, anytime you look at an alternative to the public school system, it's like a myriad of all of these awful things about it. Like the only real answer is the public school system. That's what you hear. And that there are no other options. But there are other options, as you've talked about, as so many have talked about. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, how it maybe changed and strengthened your family structure to pursue an alternative other than the public school system.
Well, it's the only way to preserve the family. The schools have decimated the family. And when it all clicked for me, I'm outraged. I am outraged that they thought that they could steal this from me. They stole my mother from me. They stole your parents from you, right? They stole you from your parents, and they made your parents complicit. And they've stolen the family from the culture. And we see it every day. We see the decimation of the family. And the number one culprit there is our public school system. And number 2, maybe vying for number 1, is of course the welfare system. And we know that, right? But nobody ever thinks to blame the public schools. But they've decimated family. And if you look at my family today, I mean, I'm dumbfounded. It's extraordinary, the relationship that I have with my children. I was on Glenn Beck's show the other day, and I said, teenagers don't rebel as a natural thing. And he said, oh, I don't know about that, Sam, because everybody thinks that teenagers will roll their eyes at you and they'll give you the whatever and they're rebellious. No, that is engendered in our public schools and by our culture. And now it's become accepted, and I don't accept it. My children have never rebelled. I've got a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And so I'm proof that they don't rebel. If you raise your children as adults, rather than thinking that you're raising children, you think of them as the parents of your grandchildren, and you're raising young adults, it's a completely different mindset. And this is why I don't like to call it homeschooling. I wrote a book called The Playbook for Home Learning, and I teach these principles to parents because it's a different approach. Because here's the thing, they stole your parents from you, so you were largely unparented. Our entire culture is a largely unparented culture. So how are we going to know how to parent if we weren't parented and our parents weren't parented? By the way, I'm not blaming parents. I'm just saying, like, the government came in and said, we're going to take care of this for you. Give us your children. Don't worry about it. And look what they've done. So, and then just to circle back, because I didn't even mention this, my film is coming out at the end of January 26th. It's a 4-day Fathom event. By the way, we're selling out theaters. So they've grown from 1,000 theaters. Now it's going to launch on 1,500, which is very exciting. There's a lot of excitement about the film. You can go to leftbehindmovie.com to find out more and get tickets. And I went online. I'm going to be in LA and in West Palm Beach. And so I got tickets for both. And I sent it to all my friends, and because it makes it so easy. You order your tickets and then you just send the link to all your friends and say, hey, join me at the theater. And we sold out one theater here in West Palm Beach already. They had to open another screen for us. So it's very exciting. So I guess to my point, like, and I'm still acting, and it's enough, like, because I do my books and I do this. Honestly, this is a ministry for me. I'm trying to save children, because our public school system and our school system in general is a system of enslavement. It locks you in. It doesn't free you. And there's a much better method out there. There's a much better way out there. And I call it the freedom, education freedom is what I call it. So,
Sam, we have to take one more quick break, and we'll be back with more faith versus culture on the other side. Welcome back to Faith versus Culture on the CBN News Channel. Sam, I have one more question for you, and it has to do with teachers. A lot of people, they sort of want to hang out teachers to dry today. They're frustrated with teachers. They're frustrated with the educators. And a lot of the onus falls on those teachers when it comes to the issues that are happening in the system. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I'm sure there are some very bad teachers out there, and we've seen them, right? We've seen the evidence of them. I would say by and large, teachers are trying to, I pity teachers because they're working in a system, and let's be sure to understand the system is not broken, and it cannot be fixed because it's not broken. It is doing, we started this whole conversation, it's doing exactly what it was set up to do. It's doing exactly what it was designed to accomplish. And the teachers are just pawns. They go into it thinking, I'm going to make a difference in some child's life. And many of them can, and many of them do. But the system itself is the damaging element. And so they're running backwards on a train that's headed off a cliff. The train's still going. My call to teachers, especially Christian teachers, is jump off the train and start educating other people's kids and helping them with that, rather than sort of feeding a perverted, evil, now that we see how evil it is, evil system, and encourage parents to take their kids out of the system. In fact, I just spoke at the National Association of Christian Lawmakers, and there was a guy there who ran for school board, and they're very busy changing wording so that transgender students can travel with travel teams, but not impose on non-transgender students, and this whole thing. And his kid's in school. And I said, but you got to take your kid out of school. And he's like, well, why? I mean, I'm in the school. I'm doing my part. I'm trying to fix. I said, You have to take your kid out of school for two reasons. One, he doesn't belong in school, full stop. And you see what's happening in the school and you know that that's evil and you're exposing your child to evil every day. But number two, by leaving your child in the school and having taken this leadership position, which you ran for and you won, and God bless you for doing it, because I'm all for waging battle, right? As adults. But leaving your child in the school sends a message to all of the other parents out there. Don't worry, I've got this covered. I'm going to take care of it. And you know darn well that you're not, because you're running backwards on a train that's headed off a cliff, and you should save your child, and you should set the example for other parents to do the same thing. So I call on Christian parents, grow some strength, have faith in the Lord, for crying out loud. The Lord commands you to educate your children. Deuteronomy. Teach these words to your children as you walk and when you lay down to sleep. I don't know what you're thinking, allowing the culture to intimidate you like that. And I call on pastors. You know what? You guys need to step up and lead the way here. And there are some who are doing that. God bless them. Because honestly, they have frightened us all out of the education game. Don't worry, we've got it covered. And look what they're doing, okay? This is a big ruse. So don't allow yourself to be fooled.
Well, Sam, as always, wonderful conversation. And I want to just give a plug to Left Behind. Go to leftbehindmovie.com. Comes out January 26th. That's a Fathom event. And love that you shared with us your story, your journey, and your passion. We'll have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Everyone else, we'll be right back with more Faith versus Culture.
Well, welcome back to Faith versus Culture. That is all the time we have, unfortunately, for this episode of the show on the CBN News Channel. Thank you so much for being here. You can check out more on cbnnews.com and faithwire.com. We'll see you next time. God bless.